Hi, my name is Jake, and I am a bookish drummer. So for today's video, I have for you guys my February wrap-up. All the books that I read in the month of February. And I definitely didn't read as many books as I thought I would, as much as I planned on doing. It's definitely a lot less than January, which January was like astronomical for me personally. But yeah, it happens. I got into some reading slumps. I read some books that weren't terrific, so my motivation throughout the month kind of waxed and waned for several reasons. But yeah, I did manage to read some really good books. But we're gonna start with the bad ones first. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and jump right into it. Okay, so the first book I feel really bad about because it's a book that Stacy chose for me to read for our little TBR swap that we've been doing. And I DNF'd it, and I really wanted to like it, but I got like 100 pages in, and like something that should have been exciting just fell flat for me, and at that point I just had really no motivation to finish the book. And I know it will make a lot of people mad, not just Stacy. And that would be Golden Sun by Pierce Brown. Now, for this book, I was a bit excited to read it just because even though I didn't enjoy Red Rising, I really didn't like Darrow, and just the first part of the book was great, like the first 50 pages, and then you get into it, and I really didn't like the directions it went in. But I heard from basically everybody, almost, not everybody, but you know what I mean, from a lot of people that book 2 was immensely better than book 1. So I had, fairly high expectations for it. But as I got through the book, I just realized that I still don't like Darrow, and he's like the main character, and all the chapters are from his perspective, and I just didn't care. And like I said, I got 100 pages in, and he was fighting this dude, and I'm just like, I don't care. I really don't care. But yeah, so I DNF'd this book, and I'm sorry, Stacy, but she's also choosing another book for me to read, City of Brass. So I will eventually read that book. But yeah, I'm DNFing this. Alright, so now on to the books that I managed to finish, and starting off with the worst books, which this book was bad, y'all. I picked this up on a whim. It was not on my TBR, but I was definitely more in a mood reading feel, and I wanted to just pick something random, and I went with an author that I had read before, and I really liked their first book, but not much their second book. But I had really high hopes for this one, that she would come back swinging, and she didn't. It's The Therapist by B.A. Paris. This book was just so friggin' boring. Like, I hate using that word to describe books just because it's like the most subjective thing you can say about a book, but it's so friggin' boring. It's not one of those thrillers that's like really slow building where you get to like, oh wait, no, that's what it is. Crap. What am I saying? It's not one of those fast-paced thrillers where like just every chapter ends on a cliffhanger, or you get a different reveal, or something crazy happens. Basically the opposite of that, where nothing happens and you follow boring characters who aren't doing anything for most of the book. And I really did not like this. I gave it 2 stars because while it was very boring, I was not eager, it's not the right word, but I did want to at least find out what happens at the end. And that didn't make up for it, but I was able to finish the book, and I was somewhat interested in finding out what happened. So I gave it 2 stars. It's not good. It's like I said, it's just boring. I really just want to vent about this book, but I feel like the vent would be boring because it would just be me saying that the book is boring over and over again. But just, and the other thing is this book could have had so much potential. It's a really cool premise. Just why? I don't think I will be reading anything else by this author. I have 2 of her other books that she released before this and after Behind Closed Doors, but Behind Closed Doors might just be a one-hit wonder. Just a book that she knocked out of the park and then just cannot replicate. And I do not foresee trying any of her other books. God, it's just... And of course, the one book that I decide to read, that's not on my TBR, I'm like, oh yeah, let's read this. What were you thinking, Jake? What were you thinking? The Therapist. You're going to need to talk to someone. Yeah, I'm going to need to talk to someone because this book was freaking boring as hell. The next book I have to talk about is also a book that Stacy gave me to read for our TBR swap. It's called Awaken Online, or the series is called Awaken Online, and book 1 is called Catharsis. And this was also kind of like a wild card pick. She wasn't sure if I would love it or not, but she was interested to see what I thought of it. It's called a lit RPG book, and essentially the main character is this kid who's in high school who's dealing with problems, but he is playing this new online game where it's very virtual reality type, and you're just in the game doing missions and stuff. And it was a pretty fun book, but I didn't love it. I did end up giving it 3 stars. I did like the main character, and I did like most of the stuff that he did in the video game. I did enjoy that. The main problem I had with the book is that that part of the book is the vast majority of the book, and you get little snippets into his life and his parents, and they're having issues and they're very mean to the kid, and then he has to move in with his aunt, and all of that is kind of way in the background, where I feel it should have been fleshed out a bit more, but it was barely in the book. And then at the beginning of each chapter, you get random snippets of the creators of the game who are working on the game, and the crazy AI that is running everything. And I wish we would have gotten a bit more with that. So I think the pacing could have really been better in this book. But overall, it was a fun book. Oh yeah, and I think I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. So yeah, pretty good book. I liked it. Next book I have to talk about is also another random book that I decided to pick up because what the hell, I'm a mood reader now. And I chose this one because it's an author that is in my top 10 favorite authors of all time. I love most of his books. And this is a very famous book by him, so I was always interested to read it, and I was like, I might as well read it. I have the audiobook. I can do some yard work while I listen to it. And that would be The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle by Haruki Murakami. Now, this book was really hard to rate because it starts out amazingly. I would say the first 300 pages, I probably would have given 4.5 stars or even 5 stars potentially. But it's a long Murakami book. It's about 600 pages, and the audiobook is 26 hours, and it definitely overstays its welcome. For me, I compared it to, say, your best friend is coming to visit for a week, and you get all excited and you're having fun, but then they end up staying for a month. And, about 3 or 4 weeks in, you're get the hell out of my house. That's essentially what this book was, because it started out really good. I was having a great time with it. And then it just, like I said, it overstays its welcome, and there's just so much stuff in here that I felt was unnecessary, or either just stuff that went over my head, why are we even talking about this right now? But like I said, the first few hundred pages were great, and then But I ended up giving it 3.5 stars. It's not a Murakami book that I'd see myself rereading anytime soon, but maybe it's something I would revisit in the distant future to see if I like it a bit more. But yeah, I had a decent time with it. It was 3.5 stars. Definitely not my favorite Murakami, and I don't think it's a great starting point, even though I've heard people say that they started with this book and loved it. So I don't know. What do I know? All right, now we have a few books that I've given 4 stars. So these books were really good, but not quite perfect or like top tier all time books. This book is 3 Miles Past by Stephen Graham Jones. I love Stephen Graham Jones. I love most of his books. And I was particularly excited to get to this book because it's a collection of 3 novellas by him. And for me, the novellas kept getting better and better. So the first novella, while I did think it was good, I didn't enjoy reading it because it was very gross and disturbing. And normally I like that. Like, I like getting gross stuff. Like, I love horror movies, for crying out loud, like just gross out stuff. But even this was just like, I don't want to read this. But it was decent. Like, if I would have to rate that novella, I'd give it 3 stars. And then the second novella I actually really liked. I'd probably give that 4 stars. Not like gross out stuff, but I did like the directions it went in. But for me, like, the saving grace for this book and why it gets 4 stars is the last novella, which I would give 5 stars on its own. It's one of my favorite Stephen Graham Jones stories I've ever read. Oh God, what's it called? The Coming of Night. This was an awesome novella. And it definitely went into some weird directions. But it was the perfect balance of being weird and gross, but also entertaining, while the first novella was just weird and gross and not enjoyable. But yes, the last novella in here is the reason why this essentially gets 4 stars. So if it averages out, it's like 3, 4, 5-star novellas, 4-star book. So book math. But yeah, I really did enjoy this, and it's something that I could see myself rereading in the future. Next 4-star book I have to talk about is Dead House Gates by Steven Erikson. Book 2 in the Malaysian Book of the Fallen. That's how I say it. Malaysian. Or Malaysian. So stupid. Okay, enough of me being stupid. This book was pretty good. I gave it 4 stars. So far I've read 2. I've actually reread the first 2 Malaysian books, and they're both 4 stars. I definitely enjoyed this book much more than I did the first time I read it. First time I read it, I had no idea what I was stepping into. I was like, who are these characters? Why should I care about them? Where are the other people from the first book? But, you know, now knowing more about the series, I know it's more thematic based and it's less about the characters. So I kind of just disassociated from that and was just like, okay, let's just go along for the ride. And I did enjoy the ride. It was pretty good, not perfect. There were some perspectives that it either I didn't care about or it took a while to get into, but it did have some really good moments, and I am interested in continuing with the series with book 3. And I know most people like book 3. I've heard some people say that it's really good. I've heard some people say it's not great, but you know, I love making decisions on my own. So this got 4 stars, and hopefully book 3 will be good as well. The last 4-star book I have is actually a book that I'm reading for the nonfiction music-related book I'm reading every month. In January, I read the Pink Floyd book, and that was fine. Good. Not great, but not bad. This month, I read Flea's memoir, Acid for the Children. If you don't know who Flea is, he is the bassist for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He's widely regarded as one of, if not the best, rock bassist of all time. Definitely one of my favorites. And if you know anything about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, they've had a pretty crazy life and career. So I was really interested in reading this. And while I did enjoy it, what kept it being 5 stars is the way that it's written. It's written in more of a vignette style where you get like basically like over 100 chapters of like mini stories in his life. Whereas typically when I read memoirs, I like it when it's more narrative driven and like, oh, this is, where I go from here and this is how I got there. But with this, he's just jumping around all over the place. And while a lot of them are fun, like there's some really funny and just crazy outlandish stories in here, the way that it's written, you kind of just forget about it because you're just constantly reading random crap that he's been through and what he's done. So while it was entertaining, it's also not very memorable. Yeah, that might sound harsh, but yeah, I did enjoy it. And also another thing that bugged me, Flea. There a lot of tell me if y'all hate this too. There's some people who do memoirs and they don't tell you that it's basically part 1 of a part 2 or part 3 memoir series. Like this whole book is literally just about his childhood. There's basically nothing about the Red Hot Chili Peppers in this book, which made me mad because I'm like getting closer to the end. I'm like, when are we getting to them? Oh, no, we're not. Oh, damn it. So yeah, basically this is all about his childhood. So if you're interested in reading this book, but you want to mainly know about Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff, you're not going to get it with this book. But you're going to get fun, entertaining, just random vignettes of his life, which is fun, but not perfect. So I would give this 4 stars. And then, of course, I have some 5-star books left, which is great because, I'm glad I read some really great stuff in sort of like a slumpy month that I had. But, of course, one of the things that I did finish in the month of February was Night Shift, which y'all are probably sick and tired of me pulling up Night Shift. But yeah, this was the first book we read for the Stephen King Short Story Book Club. And now that we're done with this, done with that, now we're moving on to Skeleton Crew, starting March 1st. And the first story in that is The Mist, and we're going to take 2 weeks to read that. And then I've got a schedule posted on my Discord. Come join the Book Astronomer Discord if you're interested in reading along with Skeleton Crew with us. Awesome people on my Discord. And then 2 of the 3 books were Stephen King rereads for me, so I'm not going to go too much into detail. But one of them was The Drawing of the Three, which is Dark Tower Book 2. My favorite Dark Tower book. I believe I've read this now 3 times. I always fly through this book. It's probably Stephen King's best paced book, possibly. I might have to do a video on that. But anyway, it's definitely a one of, if not the best paced Stephen King book. It starts and it just does not stop. It just keeps going. It's so fun and it's so funny. Like you don't think of like Dark Tower being like funny, but like there's a lot of funny moments with just Roland and Eddie just bantering back and forth and like figuring out each other's lingo, and it's a lot of fun. So it's definitely my favorite Dark Tower book. Not too much to say about it. And then another Stephen King book I read was for the Bachman read along that I'm doing with Josephina, and we're reading all the Richard Bachman books, and we both read Roadwork, which is almost unanimously voted as the worst Bachman book and one of Stephen King's worst books in general. But I always loved this. I read this and I thought it was one of his most underrated books ever. I put it in my top 10 Stephen King books of all time. I loved this book. And I was very interested to see if I felt the same way when I reread it. And I did. I still love it. And I'm also very glad that Josephina really liked it as well. I believe she gave it 5 stars, if not 4.5, pretty close. She also really liked it, and I feel very validated because I finally have someone I can talk to that loves Roadwork, and yeah, I really like it. I think it's easily Stephen King's most underrated book, and yeah, rant over. And the last and final book I have to talk about is sort of a surprise. It's a very special book for me because the author is the author of one of my favorite books that I've read in middle school and that I've reread several times in my life. It's the same author from Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie. And that would be The Boy Who Failed Show and Tell by Jordan Sonnenblick. And this book was just a lot of fun. And I know, it's a middle grade book, right? So why am I reading a middle grade book? But I don't know what to tell y'all. I love Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie, and I've reread that book probably 7 times at this point. And this book is actually kind of loosely based on the author's childhood, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a fun time. Of course, it's middle grade, and it's very short, so I read it in one sitting. I had a blast. I thought it was charming, and I really liked it, and it's definitely a book that I will also be rereading for the rest of my life. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and of course, it gets 5 stars. All right, so those are all of the books that I managed to finish in the month of February. A bit of a down month. I wish I would have gotten to read more, but, life happens, and you can't read everything all the time. But anyway, please let me know what you guys thought of this video, and let me know if you guys have read any of these books, and let me know if you're interested in reading any of them. And if you have read them, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and the Book Astronomer Discord. And if you'd like to further support me financially, go check out my Patreon and see what that's all about. But anyway, thank you so much for watching and have a terrific day.